Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, one of the civic partners for this show. Today we have Town Councilwoman Rose Rivezzi from Potsdam in the studio, and we're going to be talking about the comprehensive plan that Town of Potsdam is undergoing. Rose, thank you for coming in. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Jen.
So let's start out by giving folks a little background. What is a comprehensive plan in general?
Okay, in general, a comprehensive plan is a written expression of goals and recommended actions to achieve those goals that a community has in place. And it involves the natural as well as the built environment. So I went to an Association of Town meeting probably when I first got on, shortly after I got onto the board.
And we should tell people you're just starting your second term.
I'm just starting my second term. No, actually that's not true. I'm halfway into my second term.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's
Yes.
right. You weren't up
Yes.
for re-election.
I'm just starting my 7th year.
That's right.
I'm starting my 7th year. And so when I went to this Association of Towns meeting, I went to a session on policies a community should have in place. But one of the things they recommended is that a town and villages should have a comprehensive plan to guide what they do. And at that time, we have a community development plan and a community development strategy, which is not quite as complete, maybe, as a comprehensive plan. So, and that was written in 2004, that the town went through that process before I was on the board. And they say a comprehensive plan should be updated and looked at again every 5 to 10 years. So we were past that happening.
Right.
So I suggested, let's start this process. And I guess I also suggested
sharing it.
that Judy were just helping me chair this meeting. So, so what Judy and I did is we got together and said, okay, how do we want to do this? Usually when you think of a community tackling a comprehensive plan, it is you choose your committee, and then the committee drives, the work that happens. And Judy and I started just brainstorming ourselves. What are assets? What are things that we'd like to see? And then who should we invite? And then we decided, rather than maybe have one set committee, we would make it a broader thing. At the same time, we've gotten some assistance from Clarkson University, from Eric Backus and Alex French, who work in the sustainability. Alex is a sustainability coordinator. Eric is a professor there. And they came to the board about a year ago now, giving us information about being a climate smart community, which we could talk about in a little bit, what's involved with that. And our board decided to go ahead and take the pledge to work towards being a climate smart community, along with the village of Potsdam, and I believe the village of Norwood has also done it, and the village of Canton.
And I think Waddington is looking at it, and Ogdensburg is also looking at it.
I think Ogdensburg already has.
Okay, so they're a little ahead then.
Right. So at the same time then, I started talking with Alex about how working on our comprehensive plan sort of starts the process of also looking to be a climate smart community, because there are probably some aspects of that we can already incorporate into our plan. So the thing about the plan, it's not, the thing I thought made it doable. It's really getting as much input as we can from our community to look at what are the good things about our community and where do we want to set some goals and see some changes. And so that's what we started to do. So with Eric's help, we did an initial charrette, he called it, which was basically brainstorming sessions that had action plans that resulted from them. And
that was sort of your initial assessment to figure out where you were at with the with the good things and the things that might need some change.
And so with Eric, we sat down and we looked at Hammond's comprehensive plan and Herman's comprehensive plan that the county helped develop. They didn't have a consultant. The county was involved in helping them. And so I looked at those plans and I thought, this is doable. And we looked at what the topic breakdowns they had were. And so we came up with, for that initial charrette, housing, quality of life, economic development, land use, and then energy and infrastructure. And we also had something at that first one, institutions and resiliency. But then Judy and I felt we could just kind of incorporate those really, because they underlie, institutions supporting the work of those other
Right,
5 topics, and resiliency being worked in those other 5 topics, that we really maybe could focus on 5. So after that initial brainstorming session, which I thought was very good input, we made summary sheets, and then Judy and I said, well, let's set a series of 3 Wednesdays in January where we'll bring people who are interested to the tables of these topics again. With the initial input of those groups, now adding on a layer of a new group of people, so we can see what assets need to be added, what are positives about the community, what concerns need to be added, and then have these groups now start looking at, so what goals can we generate from this? Right. So really the plan is just the vision. It's a listing of, here's where we are, not only in the goods and the assets, but the demographic data, what are, so a basic, like, look at the census data, look at the...
It's a snapshot of where Potsdam
Right.
is in time right now.
Exactly. What our land use is, where our housing is, the kinds of properties we have here, the kind of economic drivers we have here. So all those things captured in a snapshot, a little bit of the history of the town, and then looking at those groups with more focus, and then that plan is in place. And so the reason they said at that Association of Towns meeting that it's important to have a plan is because really, I think the reason comprehensive plans came to be to begin with is really a zoning question. So you can't just, you have to justify zoning changes you make in a community. So I think that's the underlying reason plans exist. So the main things a plan do is it provides that legal defense for regulations. So we're going to have this regulation, and it goes with our philosophy, our vision for our community. It provides a basis for other actions affecting your community. So policies you might want to put in place involving the character of the community, farming, resources, anything. And then the other one, I think, is to drive the zoning. So once you have the plan in place, then you can drive the actions, and you can start looking for funding, for grant funding, to change zoning that you have if it doesn't fit with the plan.
For example, one of the things that Potsdam's been fairly successful at over the years is getting money for housing rehab.
Yes.
And that's one of the problems that we have in St. Lawrence County. It's a lot of old housing stock, a lot of it is not in good shape. It needs to be weatherized and modernized in many ways. So this would be a tool that would help write those grants.
And exactly
get
right now, I think Fred, who works for the village, writes those grants, and the village has a comprehensive plan in place, and so that drives being able to do this, and then the town supports those efforts that.
So one of the things, it sounds like, when you were looking at the examples of other communities who had the help of the county, here in Potsdam, we have such resources because of the colleges and things like that. We can really find a lot of that help from within our own community, can't we, based on these resources?
That's what I'm hoping, and that's what I'm finding. I mean, the people who have signed up to come to these meetings, several of them said, I want to come to all 3. It seems like we have an interested core group of people from all, we haven't gotten people from Norwood coming in yet, but from the village of Potsdam, we were hoping, I reached out hoping people from Norwood would come to the table as well. And then town outside, but then also people who work in the county planning office. We've had a lot of support from Matilda and from John Tenbush, from the universities, from the hospital. We had people at the table, from just the local community and all different, we wanted to reach as many people as possible. It's really, and we even have somebody at the table who didn't, it's one of those things where, okay, I have a Potsdam address, but I vote in another community, and my kids go to school in this community, but so what community do I belong in? And I said, you know what, as long as you have the vested interest of our community at heart, any input can be on the table. Ultimately, it's the town board that will look at the recommendations of these people giving input. I'll try to draft some kind of a document with help. I'm hoping that the help I will then reach out for, the people who have consistently come and obviously have a vested interest in our community, can help Judy and I pull it together and then, bring it back to others, say, check this out, is it reflecting what we've talked about? And then it will go to, I believe the steps are, then it will go to the town board, and reviews might be needed. We might need, depending on what's in there, maybe some environmental reviews or an agricultural review, and then the county planning board will give input on it as well. And then there'll be public hearings before the board even accepts it. I think that's the process. And then when the board is ready to vote on it, there'll be a public hearing, another public hearing. So I'm hoping that it's the kind of thing where we've tried to advertise it enough that we want this input. We do have a way for people to give input online.
Right, and we'll actually put that website up during this so that people can see that.
Perfect. And people can always call me.
Right.
They can call Judy. They can, somehow get something to me that we can put. I don't want anybody at the end saying, well, I didn't know this was happening. How about this? And we won't have total agreement.
No.
What you hope to get is to enough consensus that nobody is going to be, you don't have an issue in there that you have a segment of the community that's going to be so opposed to it that we can't move forward.
Or there isn't something that looks like it came out of left field that no one talked about, because you've been doing such a good job, and you have done a great job of advertising. That has been something I started noticing those articles last fall, and this climate smart community, and talking about the comprehensive plan review.
And that's a thank you to the Courier and to North Country this week.
Exactly. But again, two important resources in the community.
Yes,
so
we have a great community. We have so many resources.
We do. And the community's response, I was at the meeting last week which talked about housing and neighborhoods and quality of life, and there were a lot of people at the table who had not come out before from the looks of things.
Yes.
I mean, I certainly hadn't
been there before. It was a newer group, yes.
So that shows you that there is an interest in this, and that by opening up the process, people are responding.
Yes.
So, one of the things that we did have those two meetings last week. Tonight there'll be business and economic development and land use, and the third meeting is on infrastructure and energy, and that's next Wednesday night on the 31st of January. And that, I'm assuming, is where we might actually get more into the climate smart community information because of the energy component.
Yes, but also this week, tonight, because the climate smart community, to give people a little bit of a background, when that resolution was passed, it was not that now we are one.
Right.
It's to work towards becoming one, where I don't even know who initiated this whole, if it's a New York State or...
It is a New York State initiative, because there's about 100 communities right now that are working on this. I've been reading about it, for a couple of years now, and seeing where other communities are, and I was quite surprised to see Potsdam had voted on it, because I didn't even know it was on the radar screen.
Right.
So I was very encouraged
like I said,
to see that.
And that's because, Clarkson came to us.
Right.
And the thing is, someone asked, well, why is Clarkson getting involved? Well, I think the little bit of background I got from Alex is that 700 universities have signed on to a climate commitment, and part of that is working on their carbon footprint, but also resiliency and working with a community to make sure that we are prepared for, and the thing is, I don't want people who, I don't know, there's a variety of political viewpoints, right? And I'm not saying, if you are a climate change, believer, deny, those kinds of, people have different stances. But this is not saying you have to believe a particular thing. It's just saying we need to look at the data. Our climate patterns are changing. Right. That is not something that's undeniable. Why it's changing, it really doesn't matter to me. It
doesn't matter. The reality is...
Right, the reality is they are changing, and we know what contributes to the changing of the climate. If it's cyclical or if it's people, it's still... Part of it is people.
You're in it.
Right. And so part of it is how do we deal with the consequences of that? So are we ready? So it was interesting. One of the things that I took from a presentation Alex did is that obviously the warming and precipitation trends over the past 120 years have changed. So in the Northeast itself, we have a 71% increase in one-day heavy precipitation events. And that's the most in the country. So if you look at a map of it, in the Northeast, we have the greatest increased number of days where it's a 1 day, but on the same hand, the amount of dry weather and drought conditions also is on the increase.
So you're seeing the extremes are getting more further apart and,
Right.
and more extreme. Right.
And since the number of frost-free days have increased by 10 at either end of the season.
Right.
Our hardiness zone is changing.
Mhm.
So that's just going to give impacts to a community. I mean, might there be more like the ice storm in '98 because the weather swings so much, it's even we're seeing this winter.
Sure.
So are we as a community just ready to handle some of those things? So to be a climate smart community, the first part which our town did is you have to pledge to work towards being one, which is passing the resolution, which we did. Then, like, the second element is setting goals, an inventory of your emissions, a plan for climate action. So we've already started doing an inventory of the emissions and our energy use in our town buildings. Then a commitment to try to decrease community energy use. And there are lots of different ways they
And
can.
the microgrid projects that have been going on in Canton and Potsdam are part of this too,
Right.
aren't they? Because there's a way to create more flexible,
Self-sufficiency.
yeah, and self-sufficiency just in the grid itself.
Right, and it goes on to like their recycling efforts, increased community use of renewable energy. So these 10 points, and within those 10 points, they give suggestions of things that a community can do, and they offer points. And then I believe how it works is that after so many points, then you can now be designated as a climate smart community. And with that means that there might be more grant funding available to us as a community, and also you have a higher, like you're bumped up. If you're applying for a grant that's open to everybody, but you are a climate smart community, then
That's
you're
an extra added benefit, yeah, okay.
you're looked on more favorably in terms of
Right.
receiving that funding. So that's all down the road, and I don't know. But one thing that Clarkson is organizing is for the municipalities. It's not, I don't think it's a session that's open to, it's not like an information session. It's more geared to getting communities who have made this pledge started. So Canton, the village and the town, hopefully Norwood, Ogdensburg, and maybe some of the communities in the North Country that are interested will meet with the DEC and who do some of the climate smart work to just kind of say, so how do we get started? What do we really need to do? Like more guidance and pushing us in.
And you know, it's interesting that you mentioned the DEC doing that because they have a webinar coming up on the 8th of February, which is for green businesses and how to promote that, how to become one. So there's a lot of this work that the state is doing that is supporting this entire effort.
A good thing and a bad thing. There's so much information out there that you can really get information overload so easily, but there's a lot of information.
So, so this is an ongoing process, and you know, it sounds like once you start checking off some of the things on the list, then once that's behind you, then you're ready to move forward and start working on the next section of it.
Right.
And it's really important. You know, it's not just universities who are doing this. The mayors, American mayors, are doing this as a group. There's a lot of disparate groups who are all working on these kinds of issues. So to see that happen locally is so important because we have a lot of resources here that we could put into this process if we think about them a little bit more holistically than maybe we have.
Right.
So, and as you say, you mentioned with the change in the climate and the added growing days, that means that there's opportunities for food growth here, and with the things like the farm to table operations and the farm to school operations, it's additional local markets for folks who are doing this kind of work
All those
agriculturally.
changing zones work both ways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it brings on a whole new slew of, you know, insects and pests that maybe weren't here before. I mean, it changes a lot. Maybe the needs are going to change.
So, but those are things we need to know going in. It's not likely that we'll be growing bananas and pineapple, is it? No matter how well it goes. So that's good. So you're doing this comprehensive plan review. You're working on the climate smart community piece. Where is where are you headed next when you're doing, I mean, you're in the middle of these processes now, but doing this kind of collaborative work, not only in our community, but with neighboring communities, this is all increasing the resource base and the knowledge base that we have up here, isn't it?
Well, my hope was at our last organizational meeting at the beginning of the year, Rollin, our town supervisor, we formalized a comprehensive plan committee / community smart community committee. And I'm hoping that once the comprehensive plan is in place, that Judy and I would continue to look at now what's next. So it's not a document that just sits and, you know, gathers dust. It's like, well, what can we tackle? Or if we can't tackle it, who, you know, how do we get this goal started? And how can we start putting that, you know, in place? And, you know, who knows? Because a lot of this obviously will depend on funding. Will depend on lots of possible things. But the other thing a comprehensive plan does, which I didn't mention, if there is another, for example, where, I want to note about this because I thought it was pretty important. Like just for example, the village has in their comprehensive plan, the complete streets philosophy of making any new development biker walker friendly with as much as possible.
We actually did a show on that last year with some folks from Canton who, in the Complete Streets program that they're working on was part of that. So we know other communities are working on this.
So what happens because of this? So now when the DOT comes in to do some work on the DOT roads that go through the village, they have to look at that municipality's comprehensive plan. If there's something in it that defines a vision or a goal, they then have to work with that. So by setting,
in other words, help to accomplish it with the work that
so
they're
how
doing.
they do sidewalk curbs might be different if you have that in your comprehensive plan than if you don't. How you do, you know, park. I'm not really, but it can affect things. So I imagine other kinds of things. So if you have in your plan certain guidelines that you have as a community, if somebody's coming in to do a big project, it has to fit with the comprehensive plan. It'll drive your zoning laws. It'll drive possibly even your code, you know, code laws that maybe need to be changed. And so other entities coming in to work within the town would then have a comprehensive plan to go to.
So it's a guide, really, for not just locally, but it's also for state and federal entities that might be coming in to do some kind of work here. Right. So one thing, and this is a little off topic, but it's something I want to take a minute and ask you. Last year you started to work on putting in a playground in Ives Park.
Yes.
And that didn't get completed last year, so give us a little update on where that is, Rose.
It's still on the table. It was a gift I made to my family made to the village in honor of my mother-in-law, Kate Trithart. And it got bumped the first year because it was just too many things around the table, starting a new business that I'm starting with my son. But and last year we were all set to work on it, but it was delayed by the landscape engineer who was designing the space, and then it got delayed because of a piece of equipment we needed before we could actually construct part of the mound that is there. And so hopefully it'll get going this spring and we can have it in place. It's at the southern end of Ives Park, and the idea is that it's a natural play area. So it will have a mound in the middle, a built-up mound, and there's a climbing wall access to the top. There's like a rope ramp access to the top, a gradual grass access to the top, and then a slide down or just a walk down. And then there are stepping stumps and balance beams, trying to keep the wood aesthetic of not different than what's at the elementary school, different than what's at the Pine Street Arena, different than what's at the Norwood Village Green. Just a different.
Something that looks like it grew up from the ground organically.
Yes, in a big way. And it's just a place for if families and people. I think they utilized that park a great deal, and it was in the village's plan to have a play area down there. They didn't quite envision it where it ended up. They wanted it more by the farmer's market, but it seemed to make sense to put it right in that tree space and have a separate space for it at that end of the park. So I'm very excited that the village worked with me on that plan, thinks it can work, and hopefully it'll
Well,
get going.
you know, it's one more way to enhance the quality of life in the community, and those are the kinds of spaces you need for kids, safe spaces.
Right, so what I want to add, Donna, what I love about this community is that I think we are a community that doesn't always wait for the grant and for the thing to happen. So this gift, but also I'm looking at all the work that went to get this children's museum here.
That's right.
It's just done by somebody who said, we need to make this happen. The dog park that we have in our
That's
community.
right.
There are lots of examples like that where people see a need and they start working towards it. And I think that, to me, is the whole purpose of living in a community is seeing what can I do, what part can I take to make this a better place to live. I mean, a government...
I have this idea, can I bring it to the table and
Right.
can we make it happen?
Exactly. I mean, the government structures that are in place, village or town, you know, I'm not sure their role is always to make all those things happen. It is to not get in the way of those things happening, or how can they be supported, or how to make sure that it's going to work. And that's what I like seeing about this. So you know, I think that increases our chances. I know the village is looking to apply for a downtown revitalization grant again. They're offered again for a third round. Plattsburgh got it 1 year, Watertown got it next year. So I know that Fred is going to be looking to the community for letters of support, for input into this plan. And I think one of the things that should make us a strong community is that we have so many people already wanting to do things. So now give us this boost of funding that we can make things happen faster.
Yeah, and that really is what a community is. It's people who are working together. They live in the same space, they work in the same space, but they also figure out what it needs and how they can make it better. And
I mean,
we have a great community.
Right, and our town just benefits if we have a strong, you know, lovely center like Norwood, the village of Norwood has. You know, you have a center in the village. Those are centers, and the town is all around. I mean, we have to be one community that has those two villages in it and works towards the betterment. And also, and even beyond our town, I know there are many efforts underway now through the community schools work that's going on the chamber, the St. Lawrence Chamber, to really look regionally. You know, if Messina does well, Potsdam will do well. If Potsdam does well, Parrishville will do well.
That's right.
We have to look at ourselves as a region. We have to look beyond just our boundaries.
The town borders, exactly.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
because you're right. The only way we're all going to succeed together, or we're all going to fail together. But you can't have pockets of success surrounded by large areas where things aren't working well. We have to figure out how to do this on a larger
Support
scale.
and share,
Absolutely.
like you said, these resources we have.
And so if someone who lives just outside the town wants to come in and sit on this process, that's great, because they may be able to take it back to another community. And for lots of us, we need to see it modeled before we can figure out quite how to do it ourselves. The same process you use by looking at what Hammond and Hewelton did.
Right. You know, when someone signs up to try to run for a government office, I mean, there's no preparing. I mean, it's learning as you go, and we're just people who have lives and jobs and are just trying to, you know, do what we can. And I just love to get more people involved in that whole process.
Well, you've certainly been very welcoming. I'm looking forward to tonight's sessions and next week's sessions, because it's always interesting to sit at a table with a group of people that you don't know and start throwing around ideas, because that synergy always improves the product.
Right. And empowers people to say, well, maybe I can do something. Maybe
Yeah,
I can
absolutely.
Make a difference. Maybe I can be a part of this.
So Rose, thank you so much for coming in today.
Welcome.
There's still a lot of work to be done. People shouldn't think that just because these 3 initial meetings are over, that this process is over. So
No.
there's lots of opportunity to get involved,
Yes.
and we'll look forward to hearing more about it and watching how all the pieces come together.
We'll see.
Giant puzzle. Thanks, Rose.
You're welcome.
So our time is up. These conversations are a product of North Country Matters, which is filmed here in the Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center of the Potsdam Public Library. This show is a civic collaboration between the American Association of University Women of St. Lawrence County, the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County, and the Potsdam Public Library. Until next time, remember, our North Country Matters. Thank you so much for coming. It was just a good conversation. I really appreciate it.